someone who can kill 4 people, dump them in a cornfield, leave them never to be found.
I believe he's in trauma arrest. One to the chest. EMS call for 39 John Street.
I sent my child away, and she's on box on my wall, ashes, because of this selfish, inconsiderate action of one individual.
In April 2018, Mamaroneck mother Cynthia Arce became the focus of a heartbreaking case that began with a custody dispute over her daughter, Gabriella Boyd. Police officers, accompanied by the girl's father, Stephen Boyd, arrived at Arce's home with a court order granting the father custody. Arce refused to comply, and the following day, officers were called back to the residence. Inside, they found Gabriella unresponsive and Arce injured. When officers attempted to assist, Arce reportedly lashed out in a panic, leading to her arrest. After initially pleading not guilty and seeking a psychiatric defense, Arce changed her plea in 2019, admitting guilt to second-degree murder and attempted aggravated assault on 2 officers.
Have you heard your attorney's application? You want to plead guilty to those?
Yes.
As I stated before, Cynthia Arce suffered from severe postpartum depression. I urge society to take a very close, deep look at this issue with compassion and empathy and concern.
Her attorney said the decision was made to spare both families the trauma of a public trial.
I'm satisfied with the what happened in court today. We just got a long road ahead of us, and on one front we're wrapped up, and on the other front we're just getting started up.
During the hearing, members of Gabriella's family wept as her father expressed grief, but also relief that accountability had been reached. The 2 injured officers also attended, hoping for closure. Arce was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. In July 2020, residents of Norfolk, Nebraska awoke to news of a tragedy that deeply shook their community. 29-year-old Haley Christensen was found dead in her home, and police quickly identified her former boyfriend, Deshaun Gleaton, as the primary suspect. At the time, Gleaton had been out on bond for a previous domestic assault charge involving Christensen. Following the incident, he fled the area but was captured the next day in Sioux City, Iowa, after a multi-agency search. Nearly 2 years later, in May 2022, Gleaton stood trial for first-degree murder and related charges.
And not let your emotions interfere with that. It's difficult. This is emotional stuff. But remember, when your emotions start getting up, that your job is not to let your emotions take over, but to kind of hold them down and listen just to the evidence and make your decisions based on that evidence.
Prosecutors presented evidence that included digital communications and witness statements, while the defense questioned the credibility of those witnesses. After deliberation, the jury found him guilty on all counts, and in July 2022, Gleaton was sentenced to life in prison. During the proceedings, the judge urged the courtroom to remember the human cost of the case, while Christensen's family expressed their hope that the verdict would bring closure. In April 2016, 25-year-old Jessica Araujo was driving in southwest Miami-Dade County after a night out when her vehicle struck another car at an intersection. The impact killed Naji El-Kadi, a young man just days away from celebrating his wedding. The accident sent shockwaves through both families, one grieving a tragic loss, the other facing the reality of a life forever changed. Investigators later determined that Araujo had been driving under the influence, with her blood alcohol level nearly 3 times the legal limit. In the years that followed, Araujo took full responsibility for her actions. In October 2017, she pleaded guilty to DUI manslaughter, avoiding a lengthy trial. During her sentencing hearing, she wept as she apologized to the victim's family, saying she was deeply sorry for the pain she had caused.
I can't even forgive myself. I'm sorry for the pain that I caused your family, and I'm sorry for the pain that I caused my family.
Her loved ones also spoke in court, describing her as someone struggling with addiction who made a devastating mistake.
She suffered a little from the disease of addiction, and it progressed, and unfortunately, it led her to make a really bad decision. Jessica's not a bad person. She's a very good person.
And there's an argument to be made that her judgment was diminished because of the alcohol, but that doesn't take away from the damage that you have caused to this community. This is a classic example of you party on until the party ends.
Despite the family's pleas for leniency, the judge emphasized the consequences of impaired driving and sentenced her to 10.5 years in prison, followed by probation. In June 2018, a quiet farming community near Castana, Iowa, was shaken when 66-year-old Cheryl Stowe was found dead outside her rural home. Investigators soon focused on her grandson, Elliot Stowe, who had been living with her at the time. After reviewing evidence and witness statements, authorities charged the then 22-year-old with first-degree murder. The case drew local attention not only for its tragedy, but also for the family connection at its center. During his trial held before a judge rather than a jury, Stowe pleaded not guilty, using an insanity defense. His attorneys argued that he was suffering from a serious mental illness that prevented him from understanding his actions. After careful review, Judge Zachary Heineman ruled that while Stowe had mental health struggles, he did not meet the legal standard for insanity under Iowa law.
But the court finds that the defendant has failed to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that because of the deranged or diseased condition of his mind, he was at the time he killed Cheryl Stowe incapable of knowing the nature and quality of his act.
In November 2020, the judge found him guilty of first-degree murder. On December 18, 2020, the judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole, the mandatory punishment for first-degree murder in Iowa. Stowe later appealed the verdict, but in 2022, the Iowa Court of Appeals upheld the conviction and sentence. In October 2018, a tragic crash on Highway 99 near Pixley, California, claimed the lives of 3 women traveling together: 77-year-old Maria Rivas, her 75-year-old sister Eva Lopez, and 45-year-old Veronica Luna, who was Rivas's daughter. Investigators later determined that a vehicle driven by 22-year-old Brenda Garcia Madrigal had been going the wrong way on the highway under the influence. The collision brought immense sorrow to the South Valley community, where the victims were remembered as kind, family-oriented women, deeply involved in their church and neighborhood life. For years, the victims' loved ones waited for justice. In 2023, Madrigal, now 29, appeared in a Porterville courtroom and pleaded guilty to vehicular manslaughter. During the emotional sentencing hearing, family members shared their grief, with some offering forgiveness and others expressing the lasting pain of their loss.
That day goes by without me thinking about them. They're gone forever.
So just know that at least I do forgive you. And I pray that someday you can really understand what we've been through.
I hope and I pray that you find God, that you let God in your life, because only He can give you the peace that you need. And He's the only one that's given me the peace in my life.
Through tears, Madrigal apologized.
I am no longer the same person I was when I made those choices. Today, I am a mother to a beautiful 3-year-old daughter who will accept me for guidance, love, and example.
Madrigal said motherhood had changed her and that she wished she could undo the harm she caused. The judge sentenced her to 14 years in prison, granting credit for time already served. In July 2023, Cameron Drury, a talented football player from St. Edward High School and scholarship athlete at the University of Toledo, made a decision that would change his life forever. Once celebrated for his athletic promise and academic future, Drury became involved in a confrontation in Cleveland, Ohio, that resulted in the tragic death of Tyrese Martin Croom. The incident stunned his community, as many remembered him as a young man with a bright future who had worked hard to reach college-level football. Over the following year, Drury faced 2 separate criminal cases, one connected to Croom's death and another to an aggravated robbery in 2024. In 2025, he pleaded guilty to both charges, including involuntary manslaughter, accepting responsibility for the choices that led him away from the life he once envisioned. During sentencing, Croom's family shared their heartbreak in court, describing the lasting pain of losing someone so young.
You put me and my family through a pain I never thought I could feel at such a young age.
Judge Lauren Moore expressed disbelief that someone with so much potential had fallen so far, urging him to use his time in prison for reflection and change.
Why? Why wasn't that enough? Why wasn't it enough for you to be in college and play football and to graduate?
I got brothers that passed away too. I got friend groups that passed away too. It's hard. It's just hard.
That is not a world view for somebody who had so much going on. You can't just say it's hard to not get pulled in because so many people have done so many bad things to me.
Drury, visibly emotional, apologized and said he wanted to become a better person. The judge sentenced him to 10 to 12.5 years in prison. Just after midnight on September 21, 2025, police in Rensselaer, New York, were called to John Street after reports of a serious incident.
I believe he's in trauma arrest. One to the chest. Wall came in on Central City Fire. EMS call for 39 John Street, across 3rd Street.
When officers arrived, they found 32-year-old Brent Reed unresponsive outside a home between 2nd and 3rd Streets. Despite efforts to save him, Reed was later pronounced dead. The community awoke to the heartbreaking news, and neighbors described the scene as deeply unsettling for a quiet residential area. Later that morning, police arrested 34-year-old Michael Bermudez Gagnon from Coamons in connection with the incident. Investigators said the two men knew each other but were not closely acquainted. Bermudez Gagnon was charged with second-degree murder and appeared in Rensselaer City Court, where he pleaded not guilty. He was taken into custody without bail pending further hearings. Reed's family attended the court session in tears, and the city announced a candlelight vigil at Riverfront Park to honor his memory. Local first responders also released a statement expressing grief and solidarity, calling the loss deeply personal for the small community that knew the family well. In October 2016, NYPD Sergeant Hugh Berry responded to a 911 call about an emotionally disturbed woman, 66-year-old Deborah Danner, at her apartment in the Castle Hill area of the Bronx. Danner, who had a long history of mental health struggles, appeared agitated when officers arrived. According to reports, she was holding scissors but dropped them when instructed. Moments later, as the situation escalated, she picked up a baseball bat. Sergeant Berry, feeling threatened, fired his weapon, fatally injuring her. City officials, including the mayor and police commissioner, later criticized the incident, saying police training on de-escalation should have been followed. The case quickly became a symbol of how mental health crises can turn tragic when handled through force instead of care. In 2017, a Bronx grand jury indicted Sergeant Berry on charges including murder and manslaughter, marking a rare case of an NYPD officer facing such serious counts while on duty.
Sergeant Berry disregarded his training from the New York City Police Department, his training as an officer, his training as a sergeant.
He talked Ms. Danner into dropping her scissors when he first went into the apartment. If she had come out at that point, we'd be talking about a guy to be getting a medal right now. But instead, she picked up a bat and swung at his head.
His defense argued that he acted to protect himself, while prosecutors maintained he ignored proper procedures for handling emotionally disturbed individuals.
We have defendant Hugh Berry, hereby plead not guilty as to all counts.
The following year, after a bench trial, a judge found Berry not guilty of all charges, citing insufficient evidence to prove criminal intent. In August 2008, North Brunswick Police Lieutenant Keith Buckley decided to take a brief drive during his lunch break in a borrowed Dodge Viper, a powerful sports car known for its speed. His colleague and close friend, Officer Christopher Zerby, joined him for the short ride. What began as a lighthearted moment between co-workers quickly turned tragic when Buckley lost control of the car and crashed into a utility pole. The impact proved fatal for Officer Zerby, who was sitting in the passenger seat. The accident shocked the community and deeply affected both families, especially Zerby's wife, who was left to raise their two sons alone.
He didn't even get to see his 4-year-old son learn to ride a bike. Instead, a neighbor of mine was kind enough to teach him as I watched in tears, knowing it was the first of many special moments he would miss. No mother should have to sit her 4- and 7-year-old sons down and look into their sweet, innocent faces and tell them this heartbreaking news that their father is dead.
Years later, Buckley stood in court, visibly emotional as he took responsibility for what happened.
I went from police officer to criminal in a matter of seconds. I am brought back to the car and looking over at Chris, seeing him unconscious. My lack of experience with the car caused me to miss a gear, inadvertently shifting back into first gear instead of third gear, ultimately causing me to lose control of my vehicle. My own conduct, coupled with Chris's not wearing a seatbelt, was a recipe for tragedy.
He explained that inexperience with the car had caused him to shift gears incorrectly, leading to the crash. In a plea deal, he admitted to official misconduct, agreeing to resign from the police force and give up his pension.
We have somebody who spent a career giving people tickets for what you went out and did. It says to me that there's arrogance.
During sentencing, the judge acknowledged Buckley's remorse, but emphasized that as a law enforcement officer, he should have known better. Buckley received a 3-year prison sentence, the maximum allowed under the plea agreement. In March 2021, tragedy struck the Evergreen Court home for adults in Spring Valley, New York. As part of pre-Passover preparations, Rabbis Nathaniel Summer and his son Aaron Summer used a blowtorch and hot coals to cleanse the facility's kitchen, a traditional ritual to remove leavened food before the holiday. What they didn't realize was that a small fire had started inside a wall. Hours later, it spread rapidly through the building, claiming the lives of volunteer firefighter Jared Lloyd, who was helping evacuate residents, and Oliver Houston, a 79-year-old resident. The incident devastated devastated both the local community and the firefighting family, who considered Lloyd a hero for his final rescue efforts. After 2 years of investigation, both Nathaniel and Aaron accepted responsibility. In June 2023, they pleaded guilty, Nathaniel to manslaughter and Aaron to reckless endangerment, acknowledging that their actions unintentionally led to the fatal blaze. During sentencing in September 2023, in tears, Nathaniel apologized, expressing deep remorse for what they called a tragic accident.
It is my prayer that justice will be done today, for all should be treated equally under the law and be held accountable for their actions. I'm asking that you will consider the impact of this tragedy and that the punishment will equal the crime.
I'm sorry. I feel terrible for what I did. I've tried my whole life to help people, and I did the exact opposite here. And it hurts so many people, and I feel terrible for them.
Judge Kevin Russo followed the plea agreement, giving Nathaniel 5 years probation and Aaron 3. The courtroom was filled with firefighters and grieving relatives, many upset that no jail time was imposed. Jared Lloyd's mother voiced her heartbreak, saying the punishment did not reflect the loss endured by so many. In May 1991, Timmy Wiltsey vanished while attending a local carnival in South Amboy, New Jersey, with his mother, Michelle Lodzinski. The disappearance quickly drew public attention as search teams scoured the area with no success. Lodzinski's account of what happened changed several times. At first, she said Timmy had wandered off, then claimed he had been taken by a stranger. These inconsistencies fueled public suspicion, but with no clear evidence, the case went cold. Nearly a year later, in April 1992, investigators made a grim discovery. Remains later identified as Timmy's were found in a secluded marsh in Edison, New Jersey. The cause of death could not be determined, but the finding kept suspicion around Lodzinski alive for decades. More than 20 years later, new forensic reviews and witness testimony prompted authorities to reopen the case. In 2014, Lodzinski was arrested and charged with her son's murder. After a lengthy trial, she was found guilty in 2016 and sentenced to 30 years in prison without parole.
Mr. Foreman, has the jury arrived with a verdict?
Yes, we have.
Is this unanimous verdict of all 12 jurors?
Yes, it is.
How do you find, as to count 1 of the indictment charging defendant Michelle Lodzinski on or between May 25, 1991 and April 23, 1992 in the city of South Amboy and or the borough of Sayreville and or the township of Edison and or other municipalities within the county of Middlesex, aforesaid, and or other municipalities all within the jurisdiction of the court did purposely or knowingly cause the death of Timothy Wiltsey or did purposely or knowingly cause seriously bodily injury to Timothy Wiltsey resulting in his death?
Guilty.
Lodzinski maintained her innocence, and her defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial. Then, in a dramatic turn, the New Jersey Supreme Court overturned her conviction in 2021, ruling there wasn't enough proof to confirm she had intentionally caused her son's death. The ruling effectively ended the decades-long case, as double jeopardy laws prevented a retrial. In 1997, 2 Michigan State University gymnasts confided in their coach, Kathy Klages, that team doctor Larry Nassar had behaved inappropriately during medical treatments. Klages, however, later told investigators she didn't remember those conversations. Nearly 2 decades passed before the full extent of Nassar's crimes came to light, and Klages' response during that early report became a key focus in the broader investigation into how officials handled the warnings. In 2018, Klages was charged with lying to investigators about what she knew and when she knew it.
I defended Larry Nassar. I told him that I had sent my children to Dr. Nassar and that at that point in time, I trusted Larry Nassar.
Did you ask any of your athletes while you were there at that meeting if they had been victimized by Nassar?
It never crossed my mind that one of those athletes had been victimized by Dr. Nassar. I assumed they would have come to me and told me by then.
During her 2020 trial, prosecutors argued that she had denied receiving reports from athletes, while the defense claimed her memory had simply faded over time.
Is her reaction to what Larissa and told her consistent with her reaction after the Indy Star story breaks and now the volcano is erupting?
So the ability of those 2 women to accurately remember 1997 is of course in dispute. All of this is reasonable doubt that their memory of events is not reliable enough for you to convict Mrs. Klages.
After deliberating for only a few hours, a jury found her guilty on both counts, 1 felony and 1 misdemeanor. She was later sentenced to 90 days in jail and 18 months of probation. In December 2021, however, the Michigan Court of Appeals overturned the conviction, ruling that her statements were not significant enough to affect the outcome of the state's investigation. On June 3, 2023, a tragic series of events unfolded in Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. Madison Skemetz, a high school athlete, was dining with her mother, Jacqueline Roger, at a local restaurant when they noticed Spencer Pearson, Madison's 19-year-old ex-boyfriend, in the area. Concerned due to prior issues following their breakup, Madison and her mother decided to leave the restaurant to avoid any interaction. However, Pearson followed them outside and an altercation ensued. During the incident, both Madison and her mother sustained injuries as they attempted to protect each other. A bystander, Kennedy Armstrong, intervened and helped subdue Pearson. Pearson was later detained and taken into custody. The aftermath left Madison hospitalized and facing a long recovery, while her mother also required medical treatment for her injuries. The weeks and months following the incident were marked by Madison's extraordinary resilience. Despite the challenges she faced, including undergoing multiple surgeries and intensive physical therapy, she defied the odds by regaining her mobility. Her determination culminated in a triumphant moment when she walked across the stage at her high school graduation. Madison channeled her experience into raising awareness about domestic violence, becoming an advocate and a source of inspiration for many.
June 3rd of 2023, the events that unfolded on that afternoon were horrific. This defendant launched a vicious attack on his 18-year-old girl who had done nothing but show him love, and only weeks earlier had done her part to try to save his life when he attempted suicide. The same person that tried to save his life, he violently and viciously attacked. Many folks in this courtroom have declared Kennedy Armstrong a hero. This court has no quarrel with that assessment. Kennedy Armstrong is most certainly a hero. And but for his actions and the actions of Madison's mother, this defendant would have successfully killed Madison Skemetz.
In 2024, Spencer Pearson pleaded guilty to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon and 1 count of aggravated battery causing serious bodily injury with a weapon. The courtroom heard emotional victim impact statements during his sentencing hearing, with one of the most powerful testimonies delivered by Madison's older brother, Robert Cruz.
June 3rd, 2023 is the day my family and I's life changed forever. The phone call I received from my mother that day is an image I can't get out of my head, and the sound of her voice is something that plays in my head daily. That feeling of helplessness is a feeling I hope to never experience again. As an older brother and son, all I wanted to do was be there. I couldn't drive due to how distraught I was, so my friend drove me through the night to get to them that same day. Watching your mother and your sister fighting for their life is absolutely terrifying. But I don't think that is nearly as terrifying as what Madison had to endure months leading up to this incident. Being scared of someone she once trusted, being a new driver, and being followed by him in fear of her own safety in the town that she grew up in. This is what my little sister had to deal with due to the defendant's actions. Madison was my first younger sibling and my only little sister. With that being said, I have always had a deep sense of protection over her, and I've always loved and cherished being her older brother. If anyone knows Madison, they know that she is the light in every room she walks into. She never fails to make everyone laugh and smile. And for me, she was my first and very best friend. Being 6 years older than Madison, I was so excited to be a big brother, and I would sing to her while she would be in her crib. She would hold my finger and I would stay there for as long as she held it because I felt like I couldn't leave. Going from that to holding her hand, looking at her over her hospital bed is a drastic change that I never expected would happen, and I would have stood there forever if that's what she needed. As I'm here today, I'm honored to say that I did not see my sister cry or get scared or let this incident change who she is as a person. I've watched Madison grow, educate, inspire, and even comfort those affected by what happened to her and my mother. She has used what has happened to teach others and never complains about it. Madison has made a change not only in her school, but the community and other individuals around the world. Madison is the definition of using a negative and turning it into a positive, and I'm immensely and forever proud of the progress that she has made.
Cruz recounted the devastating day of the incident, describing how a phone call from his mother changed their lives forever. He spoke about his helplessness as he rushed to the hospital and the pain of seeing his sister and mother in such a vulnerable state. Reflecting on his bond with Madison, he shared memories of their close relationship, highlighting her unwavering strength and positivity, even in the face of adversity.
My mom is an amazing mother. My mom is an amazing mother, aunt, sister, and friend. But most importantly, she is one of the greatest people you could ever meet. She goes above and beyond for everyone and makes every child feel like her own, and the love she gives definitely does not go unnoticed. Everyone would be lucky to have her in their life, and I'm so lucky and so thankful I get to call her my mother. She is so proud of each and every one of her kids for different things, and will never pass up an opportunity to tell everyone's success before her own. I hope to be half the parent she is someday and half as strong as Madison, and if I can succeed in that, then I will feel accomplished. Spencer may have thought that he was taking my sister and my mother's life that day, but instead he only took his own freedom. And as her older brother, I ask that he is never able to have the freedom to do this to anyone else ever again. The pain from a high school breakup is not even comparable to the pain and trauma that my mother and sister have to endure from this horrific day for the rest of their life.
Cruz also praised their mother, calling her a pillar of strength and a beacon of love and resilience. His heartfelt plea to the court emphasized the importance of ensuring Pearson could never harm anyone else.
There are just certain crimes that are committed that merit the maximum possible sentence. And this court finds that this is one of them. Spencer Pearson, you have entered a plea of guilty to 2 counts of attempted first-degree murder with a weapon. As to counts 1 and 3 of the information, you are adjudicated guilty. You are sentenced to serve the remainder of your life in prison. As to count 5, you are adjudicated guilty. You are sentenced to serve 30 years in Florida State Prison. All sentences are to run concurrent with each other. Madam Clerk, please reflect that he has 536 days that he has previously served and imposed the standard felony court costs.
On November 22, 2024, Spencer Pearson was sentenced to life in prison. The court acknowledged the severity of his crimes and the lifelong impact on Madison and her family. The sentence brought a sense of justice to the Shemitz family, though the emotional and physical scars remain. Today, Madison continues to inspire others with her journey. Through her advocacy and resilience, she has become a symbol of strength, using her experience to raise awareness about domestic violence and encourage others to overcome adversity. Melody Walker Ferris and her husband, Gary Ferris, a respected Atlanta area attorney, shared a complex and troubled marriage. Financial struggles and emotional tensions cast a shadow over their relationship, exacerbated by Melody's extramarital affair in 2009. Although Gary attempted to repair their bond, these efforts were hindered by persistent conflicts, leaving their family dynamic strained and unstable. On July 3, 2018, Gary was last seen tending to a fire on the couple's Cherokee County property. Melody claimed he had been working outside that evening, but failed to provide a coherent explanation when he did not return. Her inconsistent and evasive statements raised suspicion, prompting an investigation. As authorities delved deeper, troubling evidence emerged, including signs of an attempt to conceal Gary's disappearance. During her trial in late 2024, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence implicating Melody in her husband's death. Forensic findings, witness testimonies, and inconsistencies in Melody's account painted a damning picture of her guilt. The defense's strategy to shift blame to Scott and create doubt about Melody's involvement failed to sway the jury. In November 2024, Melody was convicted of malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing a death, and making false statements. At her sentencing hearing in December, Melody delivered an emotional statement, vehemently denying her involvement in Gary's death and reiterating her accusations against Scott.
Not only did I not do this, I know who did. I know Scott killed his father. He took my husband, the father of Chris, Emily, and Amanda. He took Big Daddy from our grandchildren, Ella, Addison, Olivia, Jax, and James, 3 of them who never got to know Gary. Scott, this is unforgivable. Scott, I have spent an entire life of loving and protecting you, but this I refuse to cover for you. My mother, your mom, begged me to take the blame for this. She said after she talked to you, after Gary died, that she knew you had done it. Her exact words were, "You are his mother. You have to take blame for this." And I told her no, that I couldn't. I still have 3 other children, grandchildren, and this is not a stolen credit card, a check, or a diamond ring that you've pawned, all of which you have done. I saw you coming from that burn pile the morning of July the 5th in your truck. You told me that you were checking on the fire to make sure that it wasn't going to get the woods on fire. You told me it was okay. I asked you a few weeks later why you were at that burn pile in your truck, and you told me that your dad had told you to clean up the extra wood that was by the barn. I told Hayes that I had seen Scott that morning coming from the burn pile. So, Hayes, where is that recording? I want to know. You told me there was multiple recorders. You did, but you sat here in this courtroom and you told this court that you didn't tell anybody about recorders, but you did. Where is that recording in the interview? You, Scott, immediately started saying that there was a gun missing, a gun that nobody knew about. You never mentioned before. I asked you more days than not where your dad was, and this was the first time you ever had that response. There's a gun missing. You should have you did start immediately spinning your story. When you found out that Addison and Cameron were there the night before, you got so angry.
Melody accused her son, Scott Ferris, of being responsible for Gary's death. Melody asserted that her own mother had urged her to take the blame for the crime to protect Scott, but she refused, stating that she could not cover for him and still be there for her other family members. She alleged that she had seen Scott near a burn pile on their property on the morning after Gary's disappearance and claimed he had been acting suspiciously. Melody recounted seeing Scott's truck near the fire and stated he had used house cleaning supplies to wash the barn area, suggesting he was covering up a crime. She also accused Scott of exhibiting anger and aggression during the days following Gary's disappearance, including failing a polygraph test and attempting to control certain aspects of the investigation. Furthermore, Melody claimed Scott had fabricated stories to mislead authorities, such as a missing gun that was allegedly never mentioned before.
Scott, you called me on July the 4th and asked me what my plans were for the day. And I told you I was going to the lake with Amanda, and you were so glad that I was going. I thought it odd then. Now I know why. I found copies of my birth certificate your dad's birth certificate, our marriage license in your truck. Now I know why. Scott, I saw Gary going to that barn the night of July the 3rd, right after you got home. And then Scott is going, and I thought then Scott's going to be in trouble for staying at the lake and playing golf all the time. Never in a million years did I ever think that this nightmare was starting then. I told you, Detective Hayes, that I saw Scott going over there to the barn. Where is that in the recording? A bag. I know exactly where and when I was standing. Scott, you put antifreeze under my kitchen sink to set me up for this. That only you would have known where it was because it was for the Mercedes. When Amanda and I were putting that house back together, you sat in there and watched us like a hawk. Now I know why. You became so angry when the fire investigator came in July, weeks after this nightmare started. Now I know why you were so angry. Scott, you failed your polygraph test. You recorded meetings at the attorney's office and turned them over to the DA's office. We hired Manny to help us. Emily is the one who used her daddy's credit card to pay for that attorney. Scott, you got so angry that your sister Amanda was getting my personal clothes and my personal things to the point that Cherokee County had to be called. That is not the actions of a sane person. Scott's anger issues have all been a huge issue. When he was in kindergarten and elementary school, Chris would...
I'm objecting. At this point, she's dragging Scott through the mud, and he's scared.
Despite these accusations, investigators found no concrete evidence to support her claims against Scott. The court dismissed her allegations as a baseless attempt to deflect blame and cloud the facts of the case. She maintained that she was innocent and begged the court to reconsider the verdict, but the judge firmly rejected her claims, emphasizing the overwhelming evidence of her guilt. Melody Walker Ferris was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after being found guilty of the murder of her husband, Gary Ferris, along with related charges. The court imposed a life sentence for murder, with parole eligibility after 30 years and an additional 5 years for concealing Gary's death, citing her deliberate actions to hinder the investigation. A 5-year sentence for making a false statement will run concurrently with the other charges, as the court deemed it did not warrant further punishment. Antoine Suggs, a 39-year-old man from Scottsdale, Arizona, was at the center of a tragic quadruple murder case that began on the night of September 12, 2021 in St. Paul, Minnesota. The victims, Jasmine Sturm, 30, her brother, Matthew Pettis, 26, her boyfriend, Lois Foreman III, 35, and her friend, Natosha Flug-Presley, 30, spent the evening socializing at a local bar. The group was later seen leaving with Suggs, who had been romantically linked to Flug-Presley. The events that unfolded afterward remain partially disputed. Suggs claimed during his trial that the victims attempted to rob him, prompting him to act in self-defense. However, evidence presented in court contradicted his account. On September 13th, the four friends were found shot to death in an SUV abandoned in a cornfield in Sheridan Township, Wisconsin. The vehicle was left with no apparent attempt to hide the bodies, and the discovery shocked the small rural community. Investigators quickly linked Suggs to the crime. Witnesses and surveillance footage helped establish that he had been with the victims that night. His father, Darren Osborne, was implicated for assisting in transporting the bodies to the remote cornfield. Authorities pieced together a timeline showing that Suggs fled to Arizona after the killings. Suggs was arrested in Arizona and extradited to Minnesota to face trial. Osborne, who admitted to aiding his son, later pleaded guilty to helping dispose of the bodies and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During Suggs' trial in April 2023, prosecutors dismantled his self-defense claim. Evidence showed that the victims were shot execution style, with no signs supporting Suggs' account of a robbery or altercation.
Here's what I'm going to tell you, Mr. Suggs. There's nothing that this court's going to be able to tell you to get you off of this idea that you acted in self-defense. But what I will tell you is that it was the jury's belief, and it is this court's belief, that you did not act in self-defense. I do not know what happened, and there's only 5 people who knows what happened that night. 4 of them are in a cemetery right now, and you're the only one here. So with that being said, the next question I had for myself is, what is the appropriate sentence, and how to craft a sentence to think about rehabilitation and the possibility of you returning to the community, but also giving the victims the justice they deserve and accountability for your actions. I read your victim witness statements, and you had 26 of them, and as I read through them, I'm gonna be honest with you, as an African-American male, it broke my heart because every single one of them talked to you and talked about you as a loving father, which I have no doubt you are. I have no doubt about that. As someone who would give the clothes off of your back to them, and I have no doubt you would. As a family man, and I have no doubt that you are a family man. And I sat and weighed that story of who that person is. It's the story of someone who can kill 4 people, drive them around the city, dump them in a cornfield, and leave to Arizona, leave them never to be found but by the fortune of a field hand finding them. Those 2 people are different people, and there's no way I could reconcile who they are.
Judge Richard C. Solem acknowledged the devastating impact of Suggs' actions, which left 5 families, including Suggs' own, grappling with the aftermath. The judge noted the irreconcilable duality of Suggs' character, described by many as a devoted father and generous individual, yet responsible for the horrific act of taking 4 lives, abandoning their bodies in a cornfield, and fleeing to another state.
It is the judgment of this court that having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 of the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 1 of the complaint and standing convicting of that crime by the verdict of the jury, this court adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense. It is thereby the judgment of the court and the sentence of law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for a term of imprisonment of 326 months. That is minimum incarceration, 217 1/3 months. Maximized supervised release of 108 2/3 months. It is further ordered that you will be delivered immediately to the Commissioner of the Correction of the state of Minnesota. Against this, you will be given credit for 606 days. On this case, the court is also ordering restitution. I will reserve restitution for 90 days for the state to provide restitution information. Having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2003 to the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 2 of the complaint and standing convicted of that crime upon the verdict of the jury. The court hereby adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense and is therefore the judgment of the court in the sentence of the law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for a term of imprisonment of 306 months. That is minimum incarceration, 204 months, maximized supervised release of 102 months. That sentence will run consecutive to count 1 of the complaint of the conviction. It is further ordered that you will be delivered immediately to the Commission of Corrections of the state of Minnesota. As it relates to count 3, having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 of the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19 subdivision 1, parens 1, as charged in count 3 of the complaint and standing convicted of this offense, is thereby the judgment of this court in sensitive law that you be committed to the Commission of Correction of the state of Minnesota for imprisonment of a term of 306 months, minimum incarceration 204 months, maximized supervised release 102 months. The court will note that that will be consecutive to count 2 in this matter. and restitution will be reserved for 90 days on that issue. Having been found guilty by a jury on April 3rd, 2023 to the crime of second-degree murder with intent not premeditated in violation of Minnesota Statute 609.19, Subdivision 1, Parens 1, is charged in count 4 of the complaint and standing convicted of that crime upon the verdict of the jury. The court hereby adjudicates and convicts you guilty of that offense. It is thereby the judgment of the court and sentence of law that you be committed to the Commission of Corrections for the state of Minnesota for imprisonment of a term of 306 months, minimum incarceration 204 months, maximized supervised release of 102 months. Against, the court will note that that will run consecutive to count 3. The court notes that the big decision I had to make was whether or not this would be consecutive or concurrent. And as I went back and forth, each one of these individuals, Natasha, Jasmine, Matthew, as well as Lois, deserves that you serve time for each one of them, and that this court found that consecutive sentences would not appreciate the severity of this offense, but more importantly, the effect of this offense on this community, the effect of this offense on the families. The fact is that I recognize what I've done here today. You are going to be serving 1,224 months in the correctional facility, and I recognize that in doing the math, because we here in the court talks about this in terms of months, that's 101 years.
The jury found Suggs guilty of 4 counts of second-degree murder. In May 2023, Judge Timothy J. Luby sentenced him to 1,244 months, approximately 103 years in prison, with sentences for each count to be served consecutively. The judge highlighted Suggs' lack of remorse and his attempts to blame the victims for their deaths, factors that influence the severity of the sentence. Ebony Miller, a 24-year-old University of Minnesota researcher, was on a promising path to becoming a doctor, dedicating her work to cancer research. Originally from the Bahamas, Miller was passionate about making a difference in the world and aspired to establish clinics to assist women in her home country. Tragically, her bright future was cut short on November 18, 2022, due to a senseless act of drunk driving. Kenneth Spencer, the man responsible for the fatal crash, had been driving under the influence with a blood alcohol concentration nearly twice the legal limit. The incident occurred at a high speed when Spencer ran a red light, colliding with Miller's vehicle in Minneapolis. At the time of the crash, Spencer did not have a valid driver's license due to a prior impaired driving conviction. Miller succumbed to her injuries at the scene. The devastating loss sent shockwaves through Miller's family and friends. Her boyfriend, Jack Morrison, described her as kind, loving, and incredibly talented. He shared their dreams of moving to Washington, D.C., where she planned to attend medical school at Howard University. Instead, Morrison found himself mourning her loss and struggling with the emotional toll of the tragedy.
Every time I say goodbye to someone, I wonder if it's the last time I'll ever hear or see them again. It's like a knife in my heart. I have panic attacks constantly, especially when a legal date like today is on the horizon. I cry almost every day. I'm not a crier at all. Anyone that knows me knows I can be emotional, but I don't cry. But I have, because I miss the person that made my life so peaceful and beautiful, and know that she can't come back. My friends and family have stepped up admirably, and I'm so thankful for them. They've done so much, and without them I wouldn't have graduated. I wouldn't have done the 4 jobs I had to work and teach my students every single day and get out of bed. But I still have the scars. As for the defendant, I have no concerns he'll be a threat to myself or my family. However, I'm concerned about what will happen to the community if the defendant does not make considerable and profound efforts to make a positive and meaningful change in his life. If the defendant is to receive probation, I would like the following conditions. These are my opinions, of course, and I know that you have the best judgment. But if he receives probation, I want the maximum amount of community service. But this should be community service that actually goes towards bettering someone, helping someone else that is going through a tough time, just like Ebony would want. But I want all of it with strict supervision. I want the maximum amount of mental health and chemical dependency evaluations that the state can give. with additional requirements that the defendant do take their medication for their underlying mental health conditions with strict supervision. And lastly, I would request that the defendant undergo the maximum amount of classes for anger management and other behavioral needs that the state can mandate, once again with strict supervision.
Jack reflected on the profound impact of losing Ebony. He shared his struggles with grief, panic attacks, and a sense of despair, acknowledging the irreplaceable void her absence has left in his life. While expressing anger over the reckless actions of the defendant, Kenneth Spencer, Jack emphasized the need for accountability and meaningful rehabilitation. He urged for strict probation conditions, including community service, mental health evaluations, and behavioral therapy should leniency be considered. Miller's family, including her father, gave emotional impact statements during the sentencing, highlighting the devastating loss of a vibrant young woman.
I sent my child away for an education, and now she's on a box on my wall. Ashes because of the selfish, inconsiderate action of one individual, an habitual offender. So I'm not here to forgive. There's no forgiveness for me because it was a choice that he made to drive drunk under the influence. That was a choice, a conscious choice. I'm here to ask the courts to just look at the evidence before the courts, his history, his intent, what he did, the circumstances surrounding this accident. And you know, you guys, you are in the U.S. system, we're in the Westminster system of law, and the maximum penalty here does not in any way, shape, or form fit the crime. You know, his actions were unforgivable in my eyesight. It's just a tragedy. You know, it changed so many things. And not only did he take away my daughter, he took away my lineage, my bloodline. He took away my life investment. He took away me. That is me.
Her father noted that Spencer's decision to drive drunk had not only taken his daughter's life, but also disrupted the family's legacy and future. The pain of her absence remains an irreplaceable void in their lives. In March 2023, Spencer pleaded guilty to criminal vehicular homicide, acknowledging the consequences of his actions. During the sentencing hearing in June 2023, Spencer expressed deep remorse.
To the Miller family, my name is Kenneth Spencer, Jr. I'm reaching out to the family on the behalf of the expression my deepest condolences of the loss of a life that I removed from you all. I'm not sure what can bring the family full closure, but I hope and pray that this letter can be a start and bring healing to the death that should not have happened. It's very emotional to even think about, and I'm mentally not here. It hurts me every time I think about it. I know Miss Miller had goals to complete. She seemed like a very great human. I wish I could trade places with her every day. I should be gone, not Miss Miller. I'm really lost and would like help. I cannot forgive myself, and drugs and alcohol took my life over. I will take all the help that I can get, and this can be a start of honoring Miss Miller's life. Every day I wish I could have gotten out and helped her, but I was too hurt myself at the time to do anything but stand outside my car. This is very hard to deal with, and I consider myself a kind-hearted person that would never take someone's life, and most definitely wouldn't leave a family hurting and pain. I am in prayers for the family and as my family as well. I hope the family can find it in your hearts to forgive me eventually. There's no words that I can say that will bring Miss Miller back or change what I did. That happened that night of November 18th. I do hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. And that is all I have to say.
He stated that he wished he could trade places with Miller. He described his struggle with mental health and substance abuse, acknowledging the pain he caused her family. The court sentenced Spencer to 42 months in prison, of which he is expected to serve approximately 28 months, followed by supervised release. This sentence, while within legal guidelines, felt insufficient to Miller's family, who believed it did not match the magnitude of their loss. The sentencing underscored the importance of accountability, but also highlighted the enduring pain of those left behind. Big thanks to our viewers for joining the courtroom journey with us. Your interest in the stories of justice is what keeps our channel alive.